What's up, everyone? Matt here with Down Once More, and it is time for another mini episode. So, summer's kicking off, we're getting into the swing of things, which means it is summer blockbuster season. So, what we're going to do today is we're going to do some mini reviews of some movies that I watched while I was being a bum this weekend. I had nothing planned, and it was great. And so I just vegged out, relaxed, and capped it off by watching The Flash right before I'm recording this. So I'm going to do a few mini reviews. I'm going to do no spoilers for all of them. Before we get into that, though, just wanted to give you guys a reminder. I hate doing this. If you can, go like, comment, subscribe, share the podcast, YouTube especially. We still have it open right now to go enter a comment on our previous episode with Rayleigh and I and let us know which movie you want us to pick and do a musical review of for July. And we'll potentially put your option on the wheel. So head over to the video, comment on that. So far, we have 0 comments. So if you just make a comment of a musical movie that you, or a musical in general that you can watch in some way, shape, or form, that's not a bootleg version, you got a chance of making it on our wheel and a 1 in 7 chance of getting selected. So head over to the YouTube, do that. You can connect it to your Gmail account. It's easy. You don't even need to make a separate YouTube account. Bada bing, bada boom. Don't know why I said that. But I am going to go in the order now of the movies I have watched, from the first one I watched to the latest. So we're going to go Operation Fortune, Ruse de Guerre, the Guy Ritchie movie with Jason Statham that got like no advertising and publicity. Then we're going to go with Extraction 1 and 2. Extraction 2 just came out this past weekend on Friday on Netflix, and I had never watched the first one, so I watched both of them back to back. And then we're going to talk about Chevalier, which also I saw like no advertising for it. It is a 18th century period piece about Joseph Bologna. That's actually his name. And he was referred to as the Black Mozart, which is kind of putting him in a box and trivializing what he did and not putting his work on his own. But he was a violinist and composer back in the 18th century. And then I'll talk about The Flash. So I'm going to keep these short and sweet. It is a mini episode after all. So get you in, get you out. And next week, we have our Pitch Perfect review coming out. So make sure you're subscribed and stay tuned for that. And as always, go follow us on Instagram for our most recent updates. We also have a Twitter that gets updated weekly at least. But Instagram is the most current place to go. And we also have a Facebook page. So all the fun stuff. Go to our link tree, find all our links, follow us. Okay, the Operation Fortune review. This movie I picked up on digital because I was curious. It was a Guy Ritchie written and directed movie, which Guy Ritchie, I like almost all of the stuff I've seen, with the exception of I didn't love his King Arthur movie, and the Aladdin one I thought was just fine. He did the live action Aladdin remake for Disney. And it's fine. It was what it was. But some of the ones that he's most well known for are Snatch, Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, Rock and Rolla, and the Sherlock Holmes movies with Robert Downey Jr. and Jude Law. And so I enjoy all of his movies, especially the ones that have Jason Statham in him. His most recent ones were The Gentleman and Wrath of Man before Operation Fortune. And he also released one after that, The Covenant, which he's just been cranking them out this year. I feel like he's had like 2 or 3 in the last year, with Wrath of Man now might be about 2 years old. But Operation Fortune and then The Covenant, which I have not seen The Covenant yet. I've heard it's actually pretty good. But I don't know. This was one of my least favorite of his that did not feel like a Guy Ritchie movie. I feel like he has a kind of signature tone and feeling and sense of humor that underlies everything with it. And this one, I just felt so many things were tropes that are taken from other action or spy movies, because it's Jason Statham's character gets brought in as a contractor basically for the British government with his team that he has to pull off, to track down, you know what, that's how forgettable this movie is. It's not very memorable, but they're trying to track down something called the Handle that you don't find out what it does until towards the end, that was stolen from a lab. And that's all you know about it. You don't know what it does. You don't know what the purpose of it is. They're just brought in by Cary Elwes, good old Wesley himself from The Princess Bride. I almost said Princess Diaries. That's a completely different thing. But from The Princess Bride, he is in this as well. And they enlist the help by blackmailing of Josh Hartnett, who plays Danny Francesca. But he is an actor. And they enlist his help to infiltrate Hugh Grant, who they believe is brokering the sale of the handle that was stolen. And there's a rival team that they're going back and forth with at different times in here. And it felt very disjointed. It felt like it was very choppy, bits and pieces thrown together. And I feel like there was a better movie in there than what we got, because it has a great cast, an odd cast thrown together. Aubrey Plaza's in this, which she was the one. I love Aubrey Plaza, and she did a good job in this, but I felt like she didn't fit in as well as a lot of the rest of the cast. Like I already mentioned, we got Cary Elwes, Hugh Grant, Josh Hartnett, Jason Statham, and some other actors that you'd recognize before but aren't necessarily household names. And I felt like it had the pieces to be good. It had Guy Ritchie. It had the stellar cast. And it's an action, like, kind of heist spy movie. But I don't know. I would give this, and I think I did give it, about a 3 out of 5 rating. It was fine. It was an action flick to pass the time, but I never really felt engaged. And contrary to most of the other movies I'm going to talk about here, I felt like it seemed its length. Like it seemed longer than it was, and it just seemed forced. I haven't seen Josh Hartnett in anything in a long time, and he was great in this. Kind of gave me, I remember Lucky Number 11, great movie with him and Bruce Willis. And I think that was the last great movie that I saw him in, but he's been in a lot of good things in the past, and he didn't do a bunch of acting for a while. And so now I just felt like he was kind of wasted in this. I wanted to see more of him, more of his character. It was just spread too thin with how much they had going on this. So that's my mini review of that one. Moving on to Extraction 1. I'm going to talk about both of these as a whole. This is going to be an Extraction franchise review and talk. These were two of the better action movies that I have seen in a while. Primarily the second one. I felt like the second one, the sequel, was a step up from the first one, which is very rare. But that's kind of due to just some of the insane action and one take, one shot fighting scenes that we had. There's one in the second one that takes place in a prison courtyard, and it's like a continuous shot, and it is so good and so impressive from Sam Hargrave to be able to pull that off and put it together as a director. And man, this is, for being a direct to Netflix streaming movie, this is what I want to see more of on there. But at the same time, this would have been great on the big screen. These action scenes, like, it had some action scenes that I felt were almost better than the ones that were in John Wick 4, which is saying something, because the John Wick franchise has been the most consistent action series and franchise that I have seen. Next to Mission Impossible comes close, but John Wick, just for the balls to the wall action, is kind of the pinnacle for me on that. If you want more of the story, then yeah, and the intrigue, then Mission Impossible does a little more for that. Extraction goes in and it gives a heart, it gives a central character, and still some of those great action scenes. Chris Hemsworth is great in these. The first one, he's more of kind of a drunken loner finding his way and back from dealing with a tragedy that he'd had in his personal life at the beginning. And it's set in Bangladesh. One thing I will say about these, be prepared. It kind of forces you to not be dicking on your phone or doing other things. You have to be engaged in the movie, because the villains in both movies do not speak English, so they're subtitled, which I actually kind of appreciated. It kind of forced me to just put everything down, turn off the distractions, and just dial into the movie. And I actually really enjoy that. And so The first one takes place in Bangladesh. There is a fight scene in this where Chris Hemsworth is fighting this group of child soldiers, which is sad. Child soldiers are a real thing. But I just had to laugh at the scene of Chris Hemsworth just completely decimating this group of like 6 to 15-year-olds, just taking them out. Bitch slaps one. He doesn't kill any of them, but he's just like picking them up and throwing them, chucking them into cars and shit like that. It was so funny. And as someone who's not a huge fan of kids, I would never chuck a kid into a car or bitch slap them. But it was just funny to see because Chris Hemsworth is a big dude and these are all just short little kids and he's just taking them out. Entertaining. But it actually had a lot of heart to it. I was surprised. I felt like I had seen mixed reviews about Extraction where it came out, that it kind of fell flat and didn't have much of a story. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really good. And then going into the second one, I'd been hearing even higher praise. I'd been hearing that it was great. And so I went in with a little bit higher expectations to it, and it delivered. It has just some outstanding set pieces, outstanding action. It's once again, because as I kind of hinted to, Chris Hemsworth and his team, they are a group that goes in and get people out of tough situations. One of the things they do, almost like mercenaries, it never states that they work for a specific government, but that they're hired for different places to go in. So in the first one, hired to go into Bangladesh and rescue this. I don't remember if it ever said if he was a diplomat. This guy that was in jail, I think he was maybe a diplomat, and they were rescuing him from this crime lord who had the child soldier army and a regular army too. They had kidnapped his kid to try to blackmail him and bribe him. So that's the first one. They get hired to go in there, rescue the kid. The second one also involves rescuing kids, which I typically don't like, and I hate how movies do it so much, where the kids are the primary focus and the primary driving force in the movie, partially because most of the time you've got weak child actors and it can just be rough. But both of these movies, I felt like the kids did a solid job. They also, even though they're kind of like the catalyst for what happens, they're not the primary character, the antagonist. You got Chris Hemsworth and his team around him for that. And this one, like I said, the second one just dialed up the action. There is an outstanding one shot in a prison courtyard riot scene. There's an awesome scene in this like hospital and everything. It is so good. Check it out. It's the only thing that's worth maybe going to Netflix right now, because Netflix, with their cracking down on password sharing and making you charge extra and just cranking out dog shit after dog shit TV show and everything, it was nice to see a great movie from them for once. I am also in the middle of watching Beef, which is also fantastic with Stephen Yeun and Ali Wong. So bonus plug in there for that. Next, I'm going to talk about Chevalier. I had seen one preview for this on like Twitter randomly when I was scrolling, and I wasn't sure what it was. I didn't remember seeing that it was in theaters, although it was just a few months ago. It was very small scale. It was Fox Searchlight put it out, which is kind of a more independent branch that Fox does a little more unique things. And so this is actually streaming on Hulu right now, which I found out about 30 minutes after I bought it on digital. So don't be like me and spend money on it unless you really wanted to support it. Go over and watch it on Hulu. And I will keep this brief because I think it's one Rayleigh and I might end up discussing in the future. But like I said in the intro, it's about Joseph Bologna. He was announced and anointed like a Chevalier, which is a form of knighthood in France. He was the Chevalier de Saint George. And he was African American, or they call him mulatto, which I'm not sure if that's derogatory or not. I'm just saying what they called him in the movie. He was a bastard of his plantation master, something de Saint George was his name, and his mother was a slave. and he was their bastard child, and he had showed some violin prowess and things like that. And his father had him go to a school, learn more things. He became a fencing prodigy, everything like that. And just dealt with so many things. And this is a character I didn't know anything about before this. I had never heard the name, had no idea who he was. Part of this was I'm not a big like classical music and things like that. But man, the score and everything, and just seeing what goes into playing the violin, I might be convinced that a violin is the most impressive instrument to play. You don't have specific frets. You're dealing with the bow too. It's tiny as shit. I don't know. I thought it was so impressive, all the scenes in this. They did use some of Joseph Bologna's music in this, but the team who put together the score and the themes of this, they wanted to kind of make it a little more modern too. Kind of like Hamilton does, kind of modernize the story a little bit. They kept a lot of elements that were true to real life from what I've seen from my limited historical research. And they kept those moments, and they kept some of the style and the heart of how he composed his music into the themes and the score of what was played in this. But they also kind of gave it a little bit more of a modern touch, which I added the soundtrack to my playlist now. And just because I think it's going to be an awesome, like, working thing. It doesn't have lyrics to distract me. It just has some really impressive composition and music. So this movie, I do highly recommend it. I thought it was great. And I do like this trend that we're seeing, that we saw not necessarily started with Hamilton, but Hamilton, I feel like, kind of popularized it, of untold stories, whether it's of little-known figures, whether they are African-American, whether they are immigrants, whatever their story may be, these kind of marginalized peoples who have kind of been erased from history, where their stories weren't told, finding a way to get their stories out to new audiences and bring them back into the conversation. So I would highly recommend this. I'm not going to go into too many details about it, but Kelvin Harrison Jr., who plays Joseph, this is a fact on IMDb that I don't know if the exact figures and numbers are correct, because people lie online, but I was watching one of the special features, they were talking about it. So Kelvin Harrison Jr., who plays him, he did not know the violin at all going into this movie. And according to IMDb, he practiced 7 days a week, 6 hours a day for 5 months so that he could play all the scenes himself, all the musical pieces and all of those moments, which the director did confirm in the bonus feature that I saw, that he's the one playing the violin in every one of his scenes, that he just dedicated himself to it and learning it. And that is amazing. That is so impressive. Learning a musical instrument, unless you are just insanely naturally gifted, it takes so much work and just perseverance to stick through it when it can be frustrating, especially something like that. I would imagine a violin is somewhat similar to guitar, where you have to kind of build up those calluses on your fingers as you're sliding and moving around on the strings. And so just the dedication, hats off to him for this. I feel like he should be like in the award nomination. He played the award nomination in the award discussion, because he played this role so well and just embodied this character so well that hats off to him. Fantastic performance. And then another fun little note, part of the reason that he's not as well known, besides dealing with the color of his skin and the perseverance from there, is Joseph Bologna in 1802, after the French Revolution. So all this takes place right leading up to the French Revolution, this story, and kind of when it's sparking off is where the movie ends. And Joseph did fight during the French Revolution. He led the first all-black regiment in the French Revolution too. But in 1802, Napoleon, my notes say he reinstated Alivert, which was not what it was supposed to be. I don't know what that was supposed to be. But in 1802, Napoleon, he ordered the prohibition of Joseph's music, and it led to much of it being destroyed or forgotten because of that. Just over time, he instigated where you couldn't play it. It was a crime to listen to it, and it had to be destroyed. So I thought that was an interesting fact as well. So history buffs, you can correct me. I did do a little bit of a deep dive on the Wikipedia, but I highly recommend checking out Chevalier on Hulu, and Rayleigh and I will be discussing it at some point in the future in more depth. Now, to cap out the mini episode here, I'm going to talk a little bit about The Flash. This movie stars Ezra Miller as Barry Allen, The Flash. It was under much controversy and discussion due to just some insane arrests and a shitty person that they seem to be. I do not know them personally, obviously, and I know they got some mental health issues that they're dealing with, and people are trying to give grace and they're seeking help, but that's been a lot of the discussion going into it as well. People calling to boycott it. And then, so Ezra Miller plays Barry Allen, The Flash. Ben Affleck is in it as Batman. And this was spoiled in teasers, but if you haven't watched any teasers or trailers and don't want to be spoiled, Michael Keaton's in it as Batman. Now I'll go back to no spoilers. And Sasha Calle as Supergirl in it as Kara. And I'll just say, off the bat, I went in this with pretty low expectations. Part of that is because for the last couple months in marketing, like James Gunn and everyone have been touting how great the movie is. And I'm always very hesitant when I hear things being overhyped, even though I have a lot of faith and confidence and trust in James Gunn. I was very nervous about that going into this. Also, they gave away so many things in teaser trailers on this, which I ranted about when I talked about Fast 10. And yes, I know X is the Roman numeral for 10, by the way. I am aware of that, but Fast X is just so much more fun to say, and there's the crossover. Vin Diesel played Triple X, so I'm going to say Fast X. You can say Fast 10 if you want. Fast X is more fun. Be cool. Fast X. And I don't think there's anything that sign could mean other than just an X. That would get me in trouble, but if so, I apologize. And Michael Shannon is back as General Zod from Man of Steel 2. So I went in with low expectations because everything had been, I was worried it had been overhyped. And then the last few days, this movie just opened like Thursday, Friday night. I've seen so many fucking spoilers for this thing on Twitter. It is just insane. I have muted. Twitter fucking sucks. It is so bad right now. I see so many accounts I've already muted. I'm seeing people getting fucking murdered on my For You regularly. It is insane. It is stupid. And then I'm seeing bootleg clips from this movie on there and just people talking full spoilers just out in the open. Just so annoying. So stay off Twitter if you don't want to be spoiled in this. But don't worry, I won't spoil anything major here. So I went in with low expectations. I went at noon on a Monday because it was a holiday today. I had it off and I had nothing to do. So I went to go see it. And there was like no one in the theater, like maybe 8 other people. And I have to say, I had a lot of fun with this movie. I wasn't quite sure what to expect. I went in, open mind, below our expectations. And I really enjoyed it. It was almost 2.5 hours long. It did not feel like 2.5 hours long to me anyways. I felt like the pacing was really good on it. It does have some just god-awful special effects. And Ezra Miller's portrayal of Barry Allen at the beginning is just, I don't care for how they play it. It is very grating at times. But I felt like it got better and kind of toned down over the course of this movie as they're showing that character's kind of growth and maturing and realization on some things. And so I liked the character development and growth of this character in the movie. I liked what they did with it. I liked the concept they went for. It kept being referred to as Flashpoint, which, if you know the comics at all, they did an animated movie of it that was really good. It's somewhat Flashpoint. I mean, it really is just, it is Flashpoint, but it's not. It's different than other versions and portrayals of it you've seen before. It's a different take on it. They had a different approach, but like I said, the visual effects, there's some parts that just took me out of it so much, but still, I would give this a 3.5 or 4 out of 5. And I don't know why I stopped rating the other movies. Chevalier, I would give probably 4.5. Extraction 2, I'd give 4.5, and Extraction 1, I'd give a 4. Maybe 3.5, 4. But yeah, I'd give Flash between 3.5 and 4. I thought the pacing was good. I liked what they did with some of the characters. I liked some of the new things they introduced. I like what it potentially opened up for the future. I thought a lot of the humor in this, some of it is a little cringy, but for the most part, most of it landed for me. Most of it worked, and I really enjoyed it. So I think if you can go in with an open mind, you don't try to nitpick too much of what it does. I also think this movie has to deal and battle with people just having some superhero fatigue. With James Gunn, the announcement of him taking over DC and turning the DCU instead of the DCEU, and that a lot of these movies aren't going to be connected anymore, and things are kind of getting reset. I think that could have led to some people just losing some interest in it as well. And then they just finished airing 9 seasons of The Flash on the CW, where Grant Gustin played the character pretty well. And the series was hit or miss. Like, I dropped off the last 5 seasons, but the first few were really good, and for what it was, and which is a CW superhero show, it was one of the better ones. Rayleigh and I were talking about Arrow on this last episode, and we were talking about that one, and I kind of warned her after a couple seasons. I felt like it dropped off. I felt like the drop in Flash wasn't as substantial. Those shows just got too much for me, and I just dropped off of all of them. Legends of Tomorrow, Flash, Supergirl, Arrow. I didn't finish any of them. But I thought this movie was really good. It was a lot of fun, and that's what I want when I go to the movies. I want to have fun. I want to be entertained. I don't care as much if it's just dialed in or faithful to the source material. I just want it to be a good time, and that's how I rate most of my movies, and that's why I think I'm not as critical or as harsh on certain things as a lot of people. But I think for the most part, that's how general audiences are, right? They just want to have fun. They want a movie that they can enjoy. I don't need every movie to be Oscar caliber. That'd be boring as shit if it was. I want things to be like Fast X, where I can just turn my brain off, have a good time, and enjoy it. And that's what The Flash was to me. So don't listen to all the negative hype, in my opinion. Go see this. I was going to double feature it and go from The Flash right into Across the Spider-Verse, but unfortunately I have another commitment here shortly that prevented me from doing that. But I'm still really want to see that. It is also, here's a downside of the summer blockbuster season. If you live in a town like me, where we have multiple theaters, but we only have one big ultra screen that's closer to IMAX format, but it's not. It's the biggest large format you can get here. It only has one movie at a time airing on that. So it only had Across the Spider-Verse on there for one weekend, because we had Across the Spider-Verse, and then Transformer Rise of the Beast came out the next weekend, and that took over that screen. And then Flash came out this weekend, which was the weekend after that, and is now taking over those. And I don't want to go see Across the Spider-Verse. It's still on the big screen, but it's in the smaller theaters, which the ones we have here are substantially smaller, and the soundproofing isn't as good between theaters. And so I don't know, that's a bummer for me. I wish we had more large format options. And so I think that also hurts some of these movies in theaters as well, or at least for me, if I can't see it on that bigger, the large format screen, then usually I'm just waiting till it comes out on digital. So I probably won't end up seeing Across the Spider-Verse in theaters now. I won't see Transformers Rise of the Beast in theaters. Not that I was going to anyways. But I am curious, and I've heard it's decent. So I am excited about it. And it has Anthony Ramos in it from In the Heights and Hamilton. So can't go wrong with that. But those are my 5 mini reviews for you. And that is going to wrap up this mini episode. once again, if you guys would go comment on the YouTube, give us a musical movie you want us to discuss, or that you're excited to see. Check out the ones we have over there. I'm starting to do some more with playlists and bonus episodes. I'm going to start clipping things out a little bit more. So check those out. And then tune in next week for our Pitch Perfect episode. I've been enjoying playing around with some of the backgrounds on the YouTube format and have a cool layout for the Pitch Perfect one. At least cool to me. So go on there, check it out. You can just hop in for a little bit and then comment that you hate the layout. If you do, I don't care. Just check it out. Go look at it. Spend some time on it. I spent some time on it. So have a great weekend. We're a couple weeks out from the 4th of July in the U.S., and so we will still be having, unless something goes horribly wrong, we will still be having a mini episode the day after that. So like, comment, subscribe, share, all that fun stuff. And ultimately, don't forget to go down once more. Later.